You think success depends only on skills, strategy, and hard work. You believe the smartest person wins, while everyone else just follows their lead. You feel prepared for competition, but you ignore the psychology guiding every decision. Behind every strong result sits an invisible mental structure shaping choices and reactions. It decides who stays calm when pressure rises in unpredictable ways. It decides who appears trustworthy, decisive, and stable in uncertain conditions. It decides who gains quiet influence without asking for attention or validation. This structure is built from psychological principles most people never study directly. They copy tactics, they copy trends, but they miss the deeper patterns. They chase numbers and short-term wins, while others shape the whole game. Those others think like strategists, not only like performers or workers. One core principle is understanding perception before action. People respond not to what you are, but to what you project. If your presence feels scattered, emotional, and reactive, your ideas lose weight. If your presence feels calm, measured, and focused, your ideas feel important. The mind decides value through signals long before facts are fully processed. This is why emotional control becomes a business advantage, not just a personal skill. A stable inner state radiates into meetings, deals, and daily interactions. People sense whether you are grounded or secretly shaking under pressure. They might not explain it, but they respond to it automatically. The next principle is clarity of motive. Most people chase success with mixed motives they never examine deeply. They want validation, security, admiration, control, and comfort all at once. These mixed motives create confusing behavior that others struggle to trust. One day they appear bold, the next day they disappear from responsibility. One moment they speak with courage, the next moment they avoid hard decisions. A strategic mind simplifies motive into clear priorities. For example, long-term stability before short-term applause, or real value before superficial image. When motive is clear, decisions become consistent and predictable. Consistency builds trust, and trust becomes a form of quiet power. Another principle is understanding incentives beneath every surface. People rarely move only because of words or logic. They move because something important to them is affected. Status, security, recognition, convenience, or identity get touched in some way. When you ignore these incentives, you misread resistance and enthusiasm. You think someone is difficult when they are simply protecting an incentive. A psychologically aware mind does not fight surface resistance. It studies what the resistance is trying to guard. It asks which fear, habit, or benefit sits behind this reaction. Once that hidden layer is understood, communication changes completely. Instead of pushing harder, you adjust language to respect their incentives. Respect does not mean surrender, it means intelligent calibration. You never notice this, but it controls you. Every time you feel blocked, you are facing an unseen incentive. Every time someone hesitates, their deeper fear is speaking silently. Every time a plan fails, the psychology underneath was misread. Another deep principle is managing uncertainty better than others. Markets, teams, and projects constantly move in unclear directions. Most minds hate uncertainty, so they demand instant answers and guarantees. They cling to rigid plans, even when signals demand adaptation. This inner rigidity makes them predictable, angry, and easy to manipulate. A strategic mind treats uncertainty as normal, not as a threat. It accepts incomplete information, then moves in small, reversible steps. It watches how each step changes the environment and reactions. Through this, it learns faster than minds demanding perfect clarity first. Learning speed quietly turns into competitive advantage. Emotional distance is another crucial principle, especially around loss and failure. Many people tie their identity to every result, good or bad. When a project fails, they feel personally destroyed and humiliated. When they lose a client, they feel worthless instead of informed. This emotional fusion blinds them to the lesson hidden inside events. A ruler mindset separates identity from outcome. It says this decision failed, but my ability to improve remains. It says this strategy was wrong, but my worth stays intact. From this distance, the mind can analyze mistakes without self-hatred. It recovers faster, adjusts faster, and re-enters competition while others still collapse. The same distance is needed around praise. Praise feels pleasant, but it can quietly weaken discipline. When success arrives, many minds relax because they feel finally proven. They stop questioning assumptions, and they stop examining their own blind spots. They protect their image instead of protecting growth. A disciplined mind receives praise like data, not like oxygen. It thanks appreciation, then returns focus to process and improvement. It knows that markets shift and admiration fades quickly. If stability depends on praise, power belongs to whoever gives it. Another psychological principle is controlled transparency. Sharing everything might look honest, but it can damage authority. Hiding everything might look powerful, but it breeds suspicion and distance. The strategic path sits between. Reveal enough to build trust and alignment. Keep enough private to protect your negotiation strength and mental independence. Controlled transparency means speaking with clarity, but not exposing every emotion. You do not announce uncertainty every time you feel it. You do not reveal every fear in the name of authenticity. You acknowledge challenges while radiating commitment to resolve them. People feel safe when they sense honesty combined with direction. Powerful minds also understand the psychology of timing. They know that the right idea at the wrong moment can backfire. They read whether people are open, fearful, distracted, or defensive. They wait for emotional windows where messages can land without distortion. This patience can decide whether a proposal succeeds or silently dies. Most minds push their point whenever they feel ready inside. They ignore whether others are mentally ready to receive it. This self-centered timing reduces impact and increases resistance. Strategic timing feels almost mystical from the outside. Really, it is just trained sensitivity to energy and attention. There is also the principle of framing, which shapes perception before facts arrive. The first description of any situation becomes the mental anchor. If you frame a change as chaos, people search for danger. If you frame the same change as necessary evolution, people search for opportunity. Words build a mental lens through which all later information is viewed. A psychological thinker chooses frames with extreme care. They do not lie, they design accurate yet empowering interpretations. They describe challenges as tests, options as experiments, and setbacks as feedback. This framing does not magically remove difficulty, but it amplifies resilience. All these principles hint at one uncomfortable truth. If you ignore psychology, someone else will use it before you. You think you already see how psychology shapes decisions, but the deeper system is still hidden. You believe you understand influence, yet subtle forces still move you without permission. You feel aware of behavior, but unconscious patterns decide more than you notice. The second layer begins with understanding how people process certainty and uncertainty. Uncertainty triggers instinctive tension, even in intelligent minds. This tension forces people to seek safety through agreement, routine, or authority. The moment uncertainty rises, most minds stop analyzing and start following. This shift happens quietly, and you never notice when it takes over. In competitive environments, the person who stays calm during uncertainty appears stronger. Others instinctively assign them authority because stability feels safe. This is why composure becomes a performance of power long before logic matters. The next principle is emotional anchoring. People do not remember your ideas first, they remember how you made them feel. Calmness creates trust, clarity creates respect, and confidence creates momentum. When you speak from tension, people listen through tension. When you speak from clarity, people listen through clarity. Your emotional state becomes the frame people use to interpret your message. This emotional anchoring shapes outcomes more than arguments or information. Most people misunderstand influence because they assume logic persuades. Logic organizes thoughts, but emotion decides direction. Emotion is the first filter, and logic only enters after acceptance. This makes emotional control a strategic tool, not a soft skill. When your inner state remains balanced, people feel guided rather than pushed. Guidance strengthens cooperation, while pushing creates resistance. You never notice this, but it controls you. Your reactions shift when someone speaks with patience instead of panic. Your decisions feel easier around people who radiate certainty. Your confidence changes depending on the emotional posture you sense around you. Another principle is the hierarchy of attention. In every environment, attention flows toward the most emotionally stable presence. The mind naturally trusts what feels grounded and doubts what feels unstable. A grounded presence becomes the center point in a chaotic situation. People adjust their tone, pace, and confidence based on this anchor. You become the invisible reference others rely on without realizing. This creates influence without force, arguments, or authority. But attention is not captured only through calmness, it is shaped by precision. A precise mind speaks fewer words with sharper intention. This efficiency creates an aura of competence and depth. People assume you know more because you waste nothing. Silence becomes strategic rather than passive. Every sentence carries weight because unnecessary noise is removed. Precision also protects you from misinterpretation. Vague speech invites projection, confusion, and manipulation. Clear speech stabilizes expectations and reduces emotional friction. Clarity creates predictability, and predictability builds trust. Trust becomes a currency stronger than promises or claims. Then comes the principle of emotional mirroring. People unconsciously adapt to the emotional tone of the strongest mind in the room. If your tone is rushed, they become rushed. If your tone is calm, they settle. If your tone is confident, they rise in confidence. This mirroring gives you the ability to shift collective mood without direct instruction. Most people mirror others without knowing it. They become anxious when others are anxious, frustrated when others are frustrated. A strategic mind reverses this dynamic and sets the emotional temperature. This is how influence appears supernatural, even when it is fully psychological. Now observe another subtle mechanism, perceived inevitability. When people believe you will reach your goal regardless of obstacles, their resistance drops and their cooperation increases. Certainty attracts support, hesitation attracts doubt. You do not need to appear perfect, but you must appear directed. A clear direction signals that your path has momentum. Momentum makes others believe progress is natural, not forced. Perceived inevitability also shapes negotiation dynamics. People offer more to those they expect to succeed. They fear losing connection with someone moving upward. This fear softens their resistance and increases their flexibility. Success becomes easier because success seems expected. And now you reach a deeper, more uncomfortable truth. Success responds not to effort alone, but to psychological posture. How you hold yourself changes how others hold you. How you react changes how others react to you. How you interpret pressure changes how others interpret your presence. But a sharper question rises beneath all this. If psychology shapes every outcome, why do you still let emotion shape your psychology? You think you read people well now, but you still miss the patterns beneath their patterns. You believe you understand influence, yet your mind still reacts before it analyzes. You feel more aware, but awareness collapses the moment pressure becomes personal. The third layer begins with decoding hidden motives behind surface behavior. People rarely reveal their true reason for resisting, agreeing, supporting, or avoiding. What they present is only the socially acceptable explanation. What they hide is the psychological incentive, protecting something important. Attention, security, recognition, identity, or fear sits underneath every decision. If you react to the surface, you lose leverage. If you see the motive beneath the surface, you gain quiet control. A strategic mind does not ask why someone said yes or no. It asks what would make them change yes to no or no to yes. This single question reveals the invisible hinge, controlling the entire situation. Once the hinge is clear, the entire behavior becomes predictable. You never notice this, but it controls you. Every choice you make protects some inner incentive you rarely examine. Every hesitation reflects a fear you do not name. Every moment of defensiveness reveals what identity you cling to. The next principle is inner emotional hierarchy. Most people live in reverse order, letting emotion lead and logic follow. Emotion reacts instantly, logic tries to justify afterward. This is why poor decisions feel urgent and wise decisions feel delayed. A powerful mind flips this hierarchy without suppressing emotion. Emotion becomes the signal, not the commander. Logic becomes the filter, not the afterthought. Action becomes the final step, not the first impulse. This reversed order prevents emotional traps disguised as opportunities. Another layer is understanding microobedience. Microobedience happens when you change your behavior slightly. To avoid disapproval, conflict, judgment, or discomfort. You speak softer, you explain more, you apologize faster. You adjust your tone to match someone's tension. You rush to prove your intentions when misunderstood. These tiny adjustments seem harmless, but they reveal psychological submission. People notice these micro shifts even if they cannot name them. Once they see them, they understand your threshold of pressure. And once they understand your threshold, your influence weakens silently. A strategic mind eliminates micro-obedience by practicing micro-stillness. This means holding your voice steady when tension rises. Holding your expression neutral when emotions try to dictate your face. Holding your breathing slow when pressure tries to rush you. Holding your posture firm when someone tests your confidence. Micro-stillness sends a different signal. I am aware of the pressure, and the pressure does not shape me. Then comes another deeper principle, the psychology of perceived time. Weak minds feel urgency even when no deadline exists. They rush decisions to escape discomfort, not to reach clarity. They speak too soon to avoid silence. They agree too quickly to avoid rejection. They change direction too fast to avoid uncertainty. Urgency without cause becomes a tool others can use against them. A powerful mind stretches time inward. Its reactions slow first, then its thoughts, then its breathing. From the outside, this looks like confidence. On the inside, this is simply refusal to be moved by temporary emotion. Time becomes a psychological weapon rather than a psychological threat. Next is the principle of emotional opacity. Being emotionally opaque does not mean being cold or distant. It means your inner state is not readable without your permission. Your tone stays steady, your micro-expressions remain minimal. Your reactions appear chosen, not automatic. Opaque minds create uncertainty in others. And uncertainty makes others act more carefully, respectfully, and predictably. Most minds are emotionally transparent, easy to decode in seconds. Opaque minds slow people down because nothing is clear. In the business world, opacity is often mistaken for power. Not because it is manipulation, but because it signals self-possession. When others cannot read you, they cannot prepare against you. You never notice this, but it controls you. You trust the people whose emotions seem steady. And you doubt the people whose emotions seem unstable. Your decisions follow emotional signals faster than logical ones. Now you approach the deepest principle of this layer, the creation of psychological gravity. This is when your voice, your tone, your posture, and your inner stillness create a subtle pull around you. People lean in when you speak, pause when you pause, and adjust themselves to match your presence. This gravity forms only when your inner world stays heavier than external chaos. The question now is simple. If your mind becomes the gravity, can you resist becoming the orbit? You think you finally understand influence, but the deepest layer reveals something sharper. You believe you can hold your ground, yet pressure still bends parts of you quietly. You feel mentally strong, but true psychological power requires one last transformation. The fourth layer begins with understanding psychological ecosystems. Every environment has an emotional climate created by the strongest mind present. Some climates generate doubt, some create urgency, some create fear, and some create focus, direction, and stability. Most people enter environments and adapt to the climate automatically. A powerful mind enters environments and alters the climate without effort. This shift happens not through dominance, but through inner weight. Your inner weight is your emotional consistency, your clarity of purpose, your resistance to being moved by external tension. When you carry more stability than the room quietly organizes itself around you. This is psychological leadership in its rawest form. It does not require authority, rank, or announcement. It requires an internal anchor stronger than external noise. The next principle is controlled vulnerability. Weak minds hide vulnerability because they fear exposure. Fragile minds exaggerate vulnerability because they crave approval. Strong minds reveal vulnerability only when it strengthens connection, deepens trust, or clarifies intention. Controlled vulnerability is strategic openness, not emotional leaking. You reveal enough to build authenticity, but never so much that people can weaponize your weaknesses. This balance gives you depth without giving away leverage. People feel safe with you because you are human, but they cannot control you because you are disciplined. Then comes the principle of value gravity. People are drawn toward whoever provides the most clarity, the most stability, the most usefulness, the most direction. Value creates attraction stronger than charisma or confidence. True power grows when people depend on your clarity more than their own. They begin to trust your judgment over their confusion, your calm over their chaos, your stability over their doubt. This dependence gives you influence without needing to demand influence. You do not chase attention, attention arrives naturally. You do not fight for respect, respect grows from your presence. You do not push people, people align themselves with you. You never notice this, but it controls you. You have always trusted those who seemed emotionally steady. You have always followed those who seemed purposeful. You have always respected those who did not crumble under pressure. Your mind responds to psychological gravity long before logic begins to speak. The next layer is the removal of ego from decision-making. Ego seeks victory, validation, recognition, and comfort. These desires create blind spots that ruin strategy. Ego forces you to correct insignificant insults, to defend pointless arguments, to respond to meaningless provocation. A powerful mind steps above this noise. It does not chase being right, it chases being effective. It does not chase winning arguments, it chases winning outcomes. It does not chase emotional satisfaction, it chases long-term alignment. Ego reacts to everything, purpose reacts to only what matters. Once the ego quiets, you gain something rare: the ability to walk away without fear. From bad deals, from pointless conflict, from disrespectful interactions, from situations with no growth. Walking away signals that your value does not depend on approval. This magnetic self-possession increases your influence instantly. And now we arrive at the final transformation, the moment where the internal world becomes stronger than the external world. The moment where your purpose becomes your compass. The moment where your emotional distance becomes your shield. The moment where your clarity becomes your psychological weapon. This final state is the true meaning of thinking with power and purpose. It is not aggression, arrogance, or dominance. It is the quiet mastery of your reactions, your motives, and your direction. You become a stable force in unstable environments. You become a strategic thinker in emotional landscapes. You become a source of clarity in places shaped by confusion. You become the one others look toward when tension rises. This is how psychological principles shape not only influence, but performance, leadership, negotiation, decision-making, and every path leading to long-term success. The inner world you build becomes the empire you lead. And the empire you lead begins long before anyone sees it. Now the last question rises. If you understand the psychology of power, are you ready to build the mind that can carry it?